Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Januranjana Yashodanandana Braja Januranjana Yamuna Vanachari Yamuna Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Radhe Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Radhe Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannath Jaya Balarani Jaya Subhadra Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Nitya Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitya Gaura Hari Bol Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev जय जय श्री राधा गिरिधारी भगवान की जय जय जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा मैया की जय जय गौरनिताय की जय जय श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय जय गुरु महाराज की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय. So I'll share my screen, Mataji. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay. So, Mataji, if I'm correct, I am reading from here, persons who are always disturbed. Can someone please confirm if I'm reading from the correct section?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so persons who are always disturbed in mind with cares and anxieties of household affairs may quit off the place, which is the black hole, temporary abode, family life, to kill oneself and take shelter unto the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead by entering into the forest. And he admitted, the management of a family life of a family is more difficult than that of an empire. But trying to avoid family life by giving in the jungle without the real spirit of renunciation was monkey renunciation. In the jungle, there were many monkeys who lived naked, ate fruits, and kept female companions. The real remedy lies in the act of accepting the service of the lotus feet of the Lord. That makes one free from all cares and anxieties of life. That makes one able to see Godhead always and everywhere. Real and renounced life, therefore, was possible without going into the forest. Even if one remained in the dress of a householder, he could be freed from cares and anxieties by engaging himself in devotional service. On September 1st, US President Eisenhower condemned the Soviet secret testing of a nuclear bomb equal to 1 million tons of TNT and scoffed at the Soviets' claims for peace. In the Middle East, Egypt's Nasser nationalized the operation of the Suez Canal, causing an international crisis. On September 20th, 81 nations met at the UN to form a new international agency to help tame the atom for peaceful purposes. Abbey saw some of the headlines and heard talk of the latest news from gentlemen he visited. He frankly told them that without Krishna consciousness, the promises of cooperation by politicians were all phantasmagoria. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Saraswati had said that if only one soul could be turned into a pure devotee, his mission would be a success. Yet sometimes Abbey became overwhelmed when he thought of how small he was, how much work had to be done on behalf of Krishna, and how difficult it was to convince even one conditioned soul. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai. So we'll stop here. And I will share my screen again. So today, devotees, we are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 22, verse 17. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Narayana Namaskritya, Naram Chaiva Narottamam, Devim Saraswati Vyasam, Tato Jayam Mudirayet. Shrinvatam Swakatha Krishna, Punya Sharvana Kirtana, Hridayantasto Hiya Bhadrani, Vidunoti Suritsatam, Nashta Prayashu Bhadreshu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavati Yuktam Shloke, Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtike. We're reading from chapter 22, verse 17. The title of the chapter is Prithu Maharaj's meeting with the four Kumaras. Sametriya Uvacha Prithustu Suktam Akarnya Sharam Shushtam Mitam Madhur Smayamana Eva Pritya Kumara Pratyuvachaha. Maitreya Uvacha Prithustat Suktam Akarnya Sharam Shushtam Mitam Madhur Smayamana Eva Pritya Kumara Pratyuvachaha. Maitreya Uvacha Prithustat Suktam Akarnya Sharam Shushtam Mitam Madhur Smayamana Eva Pritya Kumara Pratyuvachaha. Would anyone like to recite the verse?
Hare Krishna Mataji Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam.
Matre Uvacha Ritostat Shuktam Akaranna Sharam Shustu Mitam Madhu Shamayana Ima Eva Pritaya Kumara Prati Uvachaha.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, I'm also trying.
Thank you.
Maitreya Uvacha Ritostat Shukarna Akarna Sharam Shushtu Mitam Madhu Smayamanam Eva Pritya Kumaraha Pratyuvachaha.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yes, Mataji, go ahead.
Maitreya Uvacha Prithostat Shuktam Akarnya सारं सुष्ठुमितं मधु स्मयमानो इव प्रीत्या कुमारः प्रत्युवाचः हरे
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I am also trying, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Go ahead.
Maitreya uvacha prithostat suktam akarna saram shushtu mitam madhu smayamana iva pritya kumara pratayo vachaha. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, we'll start off by reading the synonyms. So, Maitreya Uvacha. The great Maitreya continued to speak, Prithu, of King Prithu. Tat, that, Suktam, Vedic conclusion, Akarnya, hearing, Sharam, very substantial, Shushtu, appropriate, Mitam, minimized, Madhu, sweet to hear, Samamana, smiling, Eva, like, Pritya, out of great satisfaction, Kumara, celibate, Pritiuvacha, replied, ha, thus. Translation by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The great sage Maitreya continued, thus Sanat Kumar, the best of the celibates, after hearing the speech of Prithu Maharaj, which was meaningful, appropriate, full of precise words, and very sweet to hear, smiled with full satisfaction and began to speak. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, Prithu Maharaj's talks before the Kumaras were very laudable because of so many qualifications. A speech should be composed of selected words, very sweet to hear and appropriate to the situation. Such speech is called meaningful. All these good qualifications are present in Prithu Maharaj's speech because he is a perfect devotee. It is said, Yasyasti bhaktir bhagvati akinchana sarva gunastatra samasta sura. For one who has unflinching devotional faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is engaged in his service, all good qualities become manifest in this person. This is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 18, verse 12. Thus the Kumaras were very much pleased, and Sant Kumar began to speak as follows. So, Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasme Shri Guruvay Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatana Vitam Tam Sajivam Satavaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Svitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusuti Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we'll just go through the translation again. The great sage Maitreya continued, thus Sant Kumar, the best of the celibates, after hearing the speech of Prithu Maharaj, which was meaningful, appropriate, full of precise words, and very sweet to hear, smiled with full satisfaction and began to speak as follows. So we see in the verses prior to this verse, when the four Kumaras, they appear in the assembly of the king, Prithu Maharaj receives them very, very nicely. He offers them his obeisances. He offers them seats. He washes their feet, takes water from their washed feet, and he sprinkles it over his head. And once they are comfortably seated, he glorifies them, and then he asks some very relevant and appropriate questions, which are for the benefit of all mankind. So in this verse, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about two key points. First up, he looks at what makes a good speech. And then the other key point that he makes in the purport is that he talks about what makes Prithu Maharaj's speech glorious. So that is what we will be covering today. So if we go back, if we look at Prithu Maharaj's speech, we'll notice that there are 11 qualities that are present in the king's speech. And so in this verse particularly, there are four qualities that we'll be touching upon, but there is another verse that has been in the previous chapter where Maitreya Muni also talks about Prithu Maharaj's speaking ability. Does anyone remember which verse I'm referring to here? If not, that's fine, because on the next slide, I've got that verse. Would anyone like to recite this verse? So this was taken from the previous chapter where Prithu Maharaj is instructing the citizens, and it's verse 20.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Charu chitram padam
Salakshanam.
lakshanam nishtam gudam abhikalam sarvesham upakarantam tada anuvadan iva.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Would anyone like to read the translation of that verse?
Maharaja Prithu's speech was very beautiful, full of metaphorical language, clearly understandable and very pleasing to hear. His words were all grave and certain. It appears that when he spoke, he expressed his personal realization of the absolute truth in order to benefit all who were present. Thank you, Mataji. Nice.
Thank you. So if we go back to the previous slide, we see that the 11 qualities that were mentioned was that Prithu Maharaj's words were very beautiful. It was full of metaphorical language. It was very clear, very pleasing to hear. It was meaningful and grave. It was without doubt, and it was for the benefit of all. So in this verse that we're studying today, there are four additional qualities that Maitreya Muni mentions. So he says that Prithu Maharaj's speech was full of, he spoke the essence, so sharam, it was appropriate, so shushtu, minimized, and it was said with very precise words, so mitam, and it was very, very sweet to hear. So let's look at each one of these in detail. So first up, speaking the essence. So obviously, when we talk about speaking the essence, Prithu Maharaj's speech was very, very substantial. He used very essential words. In other words, it was not fluffy. It did not contain any unnecessary words. And it's just like an example is given that in milk, the most substantial part is the cream. So if anyone has got cream, we can say that he has got the most substantial part of the product. Secondly, we look at Maitreya Muni mentions that Prithu Maharaj's speech was appropriate. So this means that it was based on time, place, and circumstance. And he said the right thing at the right time to the right person or people. So the Kumaras, we know, were very elevated personalities. So the king made inquiries about appropriate subjects like, how do we get out of the clutches of material world, and what is the ultimate goal of life? None of his inquiries were about his kingdom or health or other personal matters. The topics were all suitable to ask from such really encountered personalities. So the topics were also suitable to ask, and it was very, very mitam. So that takes us to the next word, mitam. So Prithu Maharaj's speech was minimized with precise words. And so we notice that right at the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, even Parikshit Maharaj, when he starts talking, he gets straight to the point. He asks essential questions up front. He did not beat around the bush. So he asks, what should a person who is about to die do? And then when we talk about mitam, it means concise, short. So Prithu Maharaj's speech was not a long speech. It was decisive and it was to the point. Now, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami also says in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 1, verse 106, he says, essential truth presented concisely is true eloquence. And that is exactly how Prithu Maharaj presented his speech. It was just like professional writers. They take a lot of pleasure in cutting down their words. If they have, for example, 5 pages, they reduce it to 3. If they are presented with 3 pages, they bring it down to 2. If it's 2 pages, they cut it down to 1 page. And if it's 1 page, to a paragraph. And if it's a paragraph, they bring it down to just 1 sentence. Now, even if we have something important to say, if we say it in a lengthy way, it is considered not good speaking. Now, being concise is actually a great administrative ability, and a king must always be good at it because the kings generally make a lot of decision making. However, King Prithu was not just concise, because sometimes when we are concise, it might mean that we get to the point very, very quickly and not consider how it comes out. So it can come out as quite harsh or unappealing. But Maitreya Muni, in the next glorification, he says that King Prithu's words were also very, very sweet. So it was very sweet to hear. So he spoke in a very sweet way. Now, one of the questions that we might ask is that, we're talking about a very elevated personality. King Prithu was not an ordinary personality. He was a Shakti Avesha avatar of the Lord himself. So where does that place us in terms of how can we improve our speaking so that we can imbibe some of the qualities that is present in Prithu Maharaj's speaking? So the answer to that is given by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17, verse 15, where Krishna talks about the austerity of speech. And he says, Anudvega karam vakyam satyam priyam hitam cha yat. In the translation reads, austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature. So one of the questions that we might have, or we might ask, or at least I had when I was preparing for this class, was that how is it possible that we are saying the truth and we are saying it in a pleasing manner, which is also not agitating at the same time. So that's an art, and it is best illustrated through the story. I'm not sure if how many of you are already familiar with the story of the princess and artist, but I came across it and I thought it was a fantastic way to sort of explain what it's like in terms of austerity of speech, where we speak the truth, but it's also not agitating to a person. So the story goes like this, that once there was a beautiful princess, and she heard that an artist who could draw realistic pictures had come to town. So she invited the artist to her palace. Heeding to her request, the artist painted a very beautiful portrait of the princess. When the princess looked at the portrait, she was delighted to see it. And, it was very, very beautiful. And she awarded the artist with some coins and sent him away. So many, many years passed. So 20 years passed. The same artist happened to come to the same town where the princess was living. And having heard this, the princess again invited him to her palace. And very eagerly, she requested that he paint her picture. The expert artist did the painting and showed it to her. But she was not very pleased to see her own picture at this time. And she told the artist, "Dear sir, when you came last time, please, you drew a very beautiful picture of mine, and I am treasuring it even today with great love. Please see this. Speaking this way, she showed her own picture drawn by the same artist 20 years ago. On seeing the picture, this artist replied, "Respected princess, please forgive me. When I drew this picture 20 years ago, I was a young man. Now I have become old." He didn't say anything more. So from that little story, I thought it really showed in his manner of speaking that he was not just a expert artist, but also an expert speaker who knew what to speak when. So probably a question that might come to mind is whether the speaker, was he speaking the truth? And the response to that is yes, he did speak the truth, but in a way that did not agitate the mind of the princess. The situation would have been quite different if he would have blatantly told her the obvious, that she had aged. Now, of course, this does not mean that one must lie or really not always say things as they are. Sometimes we need to acknowledge that harsh words are necessary to wake people from sleeping in the lap of Maya. So very often we see this stated in the scriptures, that if we want people to take bhakti seriously, we need to ensure that, we sometimes do use harsh words. However, but for us, or at least for myself, for practicing devotees in our daily lives, we just need to be a little bit more careful about how we come across to others. In other words, is there a better way? If there is a better way of saying something, then it is better to err on the side of caution and take a lighter approach. Now, of course, this does not apply to pure devotees. For example, Srila Prabhupada would often chastise and use harsh words, and yet his disciples loved him for it. Why? Because he was a pure devotee. And the harsh words that he used was always for the benefit of his disciples. In Srila Prabhupada Leela Mrita, there is an extract titled, "I'll Kick on Your Head with Shoes," and that's written by Tripurari Swami. And he wrote, and in the interest of time, I will just quote a few things that he said. He wrote that Srila Prabhupada was truly a humble person. He had a dynamic kind of humility, the kind that would allow him to sit on an elevated seat, in other words, in the Vyasasana, and to chastise and give orders. And yet we loved him. Why? Because when a pure devotee chastises someone, whether it's his disciples or not, then that gets Krishna's attention. And Krishna, as a super soul, makes that person realize that this person that is chastising him has his best interests at heart. And therefore, more often than not, rather than being upset or angry, Srila Prabhupada's devotees would be charmed. So unless, unless we are truly pure devotees, it is best to err on the side of caution and speak sweetly, just exactly as Krishna instructs in this particular verse. And next up, we will be looking at, hang on. So next up, or even before we get to that, there's, in the verse, Maitreya Muni says that when Prithu Maharaj said his speech, the Kumaras were smiling and they were very, very satisfied. So we look at why exactly were they smiling? It's was it because they were being praised? And the acharyas explain that they were very satisfied, and Sant Kumar was smiling before he replied. And the reason for that was that the questions that were being asked was the most appropriate questions by the most suitable person and for a most suitable audience. So it's just like in kirtan. So when a kirtan is playing and you have a expert mridang player and you have someone who's playing kartars very, very well, and everyone else is participating, they're clapping and they're singing along, then the kirtan leader is very, very pleased and satisfied. Similarly, when someone is giving a class, if you see that the audience are eager to listen, then they are pleased. So in that respect, that is why the 4 Kumaras were smiling. So the words smayamana and pritya, that indicates that they were very, very satisfied with Prithu Maharaj's questions. So if we also look at there's some examples in the Bhagavatam when Brahma was questioned by Narad in Canto 2, chapter 5, Narad Muni said to Brahma that you are the supreme person of the universe, but it seems that you pray to someone higher than you. Are you the highest, or is there someone else? So Brahma became very pleased because he got an opportunity to glorify Krishna. Another example that we can share here is of that of the Yamadutas when they came to get a Jamil, and then the Vishnu Dutas also appeared at the same time, and so the Yamadutas were not able to take a Jamil. So when they went back to Yamlok, they approached Yamaraj and they asked him they asked him these questions, and they asked, we thought that you were the highest authority, yet we were not able to perform our duty and bring a Jamil. And then Yamaraj, who is one of the 12 Mahajans, he was very, very happy. He was very satisfied because he had an opportunity to glorify Krishna. So so that's pretty much the second part of the verse, where initially Matryamuni talks about the glorious qualities of Prithu Maharaj, and then he says exactly how did the 4 Kumaras reacted to that. Next up, we look at what makes Prithu Maharaj's speech so glorious. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about 2 things. The first thing that he talks about, which is what we've just covered, is what makes a good speech. And then he talks about what makes someone's, what gives someone qualification to speak in a glorious way. And there are 2 things that Prabhupada mentions, which is also in a verse. And he says that Prithu Maharaj, one who has got unflinching faith in Krishna and who is constantly engaged in the service of the Supreme, these good qualities automatically manifest in that person. So so over here we look at that. If we look at what does faith mean? So faith means to have confidence or belief in something or someone. Now, all of us, we obviously have faith in Krishna, right? Because otherwise we wouldn't be here. So we all definitely know that we meet that criteria. We have faith, but what does unflinching faith mean? So unflinching faith in Krishna means to have confidence or belief in something or someone. And so we have faith in Krishna, regardless to what come our way. So it's, I'll read that again, that unflinching faith means our belief or confidence is so strong that there is no fear of or hesitation in the face of danger, because you have you are completely your faith is very, very strong. Now, there are many examples of devotees who show unclenching faith in Krishna. So the first example that comes to mind is Prahlad Maharaj. We see that despite being subject to so many atrocities, and most of those atrocities were given to him by his own father, he did not lose faith in Krishna. Dhruv Maharaj is another example. He had unflinching faith in the words of his mother, so much so that he left to find the Lord in the forest. The gopis, obviously the utmost example is that of the gopis. When Krishna had, we all know this pastime, when Krishna had a headache, and Narad, and he told Narad that the cure of his headache was to get the dust from the feet of his devotees. Well, Krishna's devotee was sitting right in front of him, Narad. But what did Narad do? He wouldn't give the dust from his lotus feet because he was worried about the consequences. So he went to other devotees to ask to carry Krishna's request. So when he went to the queens of Dwarka, they said no, they couldn't possibly do that. And then, finally he went to the gopis. And what did the gopis do? They did not care for anything. They did not even ask any questions. Krishna wanted the dust of their feet. here, take it, was all they said to Narad. So that shows unflinching faith in Krishna. And of course, very, very much closer to home, we have Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada had unflinching faith in his guru and in Krishna. Otherwise, why would he have done what he did despite so many obstacles and dangers? And so because of having that unflinching faith in Guru and Krishna, we have what we have today. We are all benefiting. So he did it for the, for the benefit of everyone. So he did this upakar for all of us. So Krishna, and so that explains the first part, having unflinching faith in Krishna, and then the second part that Srila Prabhupada talks in the purport is that Prithu Maharaj was always engaged in the service of the Lord. So then we look at, so when these two things are present, then automatically 26 qualities of a perfect devotee become manifest in that individual. So I guess from here, the question is, where does that put us? So we know that we have a lot of work to do before we can become good devotees, let alone to become a pure devotee. But then again, we should have faith in Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada's mission or his instructions was for everyone to preach, and therefore to preach means to speak, and to speak to the best of our ability. So every now, whenever we go out, we know that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission is also a preaching mission. So that means that we can learn from elevated devotees. We can learn from Prithu Maharaj, what are some of the qualities that are required or that we should imbibe when we are speaking, and we can use that. Next up, we will look at what are some of the what are some of the key takeaways from today's verse. So I'll share my realizations, and then I'll probably open the floor and ask if everyone could share their realizations. So I guess for me there are two key things. First up, when we meet a superior person, sweet words and a humble position is required. So that's a key takeaway from me. So regardless of our position, if we are meeting someone superior, sweet words and a humble position is essential. So Prithu Maharaj, we know, was not just a great king. He was a Shakti Avesha avatar of the Lord himself, but he shows through his example how a householder should behave in the presence of elevated souls. Now, if we reflect back, when we have our swamis, when they come for home visits, for example, this tells us we should be asking relevant questions. Very often, our questions are of mundane matters, and our Maharajas are so kind-hearted, they just tolerate us. So from Prithu Maharaj's questions, we can learn what questions we should be asking, even if it has been asked before, because as we've seen in this verse, any questions, if it is in relation to if it is in relation to Krishna, it benefits us, and at the same time, it gives the elevated souls, our Maharajas, they get very, very satisfied because it gives them the opportunity to glorify Krishna. So that's one key thing. And obviously, the second key takeaway for me is around, it's a personal one. It's about looking back at verse 15 from chapter 17, and just to perform a self-assessment and check, are my words when I'm speaking, is it always truthful? Is it pleasing? Is it benefiting everyone? Can I word it in such a way that it is less irritating or agitating for others? And am I daily studying Vedic scriptures? So this is where I will end, and then I'll open the floor if anyone would like to share their realizations of this verse, and if there's anything else that you'd like to add on, or if you have any questions. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji.
So the example is you. I can see within you, because the way you use the words and the way you put the pronunciation and the flow, it is an example. That's all about today.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Just learning from everyone else. Hare Krishna.
Now you presented the topic is a way how to speak, how to ask questions. That is what is the learning for all of us, at least for me. The way we present it is very, very important. Like instead of saying half glass empty, if we say half glass full, the meaning changes totally. So that is what the lesson is. How you present the situation in a questionable way or an answerable way is all matters. It's very, very important using the words, using the tone, and how smooth you talk about is all about the gentleness. And that is how
Very true.
it pushes gentleness, and that comes in your word. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Yeah, when you are discussing about the qualities of Prithu Maharaj, and his one of qualities very charu, precise and concise. And when you are presenting your that speech today, I am thinking about same. So yeah, your that speech today is very concise and very focused, and so many things to learn, especially when you speak, and it should be hitam and sweet. So yes, the question is there, when some agitation comes, some situations come, how we can control that situation and how we can do in the pleasing way. We know we have to always tell to positive way, but how we can handle this time?
Yes, good question, Mataji. So I guess that's the very question that I had when preparing for this class, and preparing for it has sort of answered or provided some realization to me. So I would say if a situation, so Mataji, is your question around when you are actually preaching, or is it when in a normal situation?
Yeah, normal situation.
In
even,
a normal situation. Yes,
yeah.
yes. So Mataji, I'll share a personal realization that I had. One of the things that I really struggled with was around we have a spiritual life and then we have a material life. So how do you blend both of it? So I was sharing with my god sister, Sita Mataji, that if I really like to ask Guru Maharaj this question, how do I balance my spiritual life, and how do I balance my material life? Because in the material life, especially when we get to work, it's a different atmosphere altogether. And so Mataji said, oh, Mataji, you don't need to ask Guru Maharaj. We've already asked this question, and this is what Maharaj has said. Maharaj says there's no such thing as a material life and a spiritual life. There's only spiritual life. So when we are in the workplace, if we always, like Krishna says to Arjun, you don't stop work, but you just think of me and do your work. So if an agitation at work appears, somehow we need to just think about Krishna. And I know it's quite difficult, but if we just pause and just walk away from that situation, if it can't be dealt with, because sometimes it's very, very difficult, because we are in that situation at the time. And that's why I guess there's that sandwich formula where in the morning we if we fill our day with sadhana, and at the end of the day we fill our day with sadhana, but it's the middle part that is the challenge. So if the day starts well, you'll notice that it will be a little bit better, but it is something that we need to constantly work on. And in this preparation of this class, what I came to realize was that we can't be harsh, because unless we are quite pure, and right now we aren't. So if we've got to find a way, and even if it means that if we can't contribute to that in a sweet way, we just don't say anything, or we just state the facts as it is, without adding any provocation to that. It's difficult. It's something that we need to work on, but if we can just at that time just focus, because there's a beautiful story about like once if we speak something harsh, it's not something that we can retract back. So if we tolerance and humility. So probably the thing there, the word you'll be looking for there, Mataji, is about tolerance. We should
Thank
learn
you.
to become better in tolerating.
And good speaker. That's the main thing. Yeah, thank you.
Does that
Yeah.
help, Mataji?
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Hare Krishna Mataji, just to add this point, there is a proverb, morning shows the days, so that comes from there.
Yeah. Yeah, like they say that if your day is hemmed with prayer, it is unlikely to ravel. Yeah. Is there anything else from anyone? And
Hare Krishna
not, then-
Mataji, Hare
Yep.
Krishna Mataji, Dandavad Pranam. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for the very nice class, so precise and so beautifully you have told that it is an example of what has been told in the purport of the whole verse. You have maintained in your personal talk these two things that you can all learn from it. Thank you for that. And to your another question on the Mataji's the other question. Yes, you have rightly told. Even Prabhupada has told the same thing. I was thinking that Prabhupada has also told that there is nothing like material life and spiritual life. We are practicing. So we have always think it is always spiritual life, but we are not able to do that. We are still in material world, so it is our obstacles. We should never think that that normally this question is often asked by the in a public speech. Often you will say, how can you reconcile? So Prabhupada is also told, there is no thing. You should always think it is spiritual. It is everything emanating from Krishna. So we are not able to do that. That is our obstacle. We have to overcome the obstacle. That is the thing. And as you have already told, it is very difficult. It is what we speak often. We often fails, and every time often fails. That's why we will try again. And in this way, only. And our Guru Maharaj, Subhash Maharaj tells that for life after life, we have. This is the things we have done. These are the anarthas we have done. So it will not go in a day. We think by tomorrow everything will all right. No, it will not there. It's a very hard task. By practice, and having faith in the words of the Guru, Sadhu, and the Shastra.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji. That was really well said.
That is the only way we can overcome him. There is no other way. And we must have the faith that what Guru has said, what Shastra has said, and what Krishna has said in his instruction in Bhagavad Gita.
Hare Krishna Mataji. It's just like an utensil you are using every day. And it has got
told in Srimad Bhagavatam. That is the way for us.
It is an example, just top grease on the utensil. You wash every day. It's still the same. It looks same. You keep on cleaning in different ways. And finally, one day you'll see it is shining. So the same way, anarthas doesn't go at a moment. It has to be washed every day. With so many detergent and so many ways to clean it. Takes life after life. So it is that tough grease that doesn't allow us to do the service for Krishna in a service way. And that is what you have to learn. Thank you so much.
No worries. And probably the only other thing to add, and I think this is going to come further ahead in the verses to come, that when we read about personalities like Prithu Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, all these elevated devotees, then we get a tiny percentage of their qualities do manifest in us over a period of time. So there was a lecture that I was listening by Maharaj where he talks about that there's a difference between listening and hearing. So very often we're just listening, but if we really hear, then that those qualities do manifest. So that's probably another thing that we can find solace in, that it's not all gloom and doom. There is, we've been given the perfect solution by Srila Prabhupada. It's now for us to just ensure we stay on the path and we just carry on doing what we're doing. So I'll end here. And so Panchakalpatrabhyascha Kripa
Sindhu Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo. Anantakoti Vaishnav Brinda ki jai. Har Grace Mataji ki, Ranga Devi Mataji ki jai.
Srila
Gopi
Prabhupada.
Manande Hari Hari. All
Jai.
glories to assembled devotees.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Devotees. Hare Krishna.